everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of The Best You, a coaching podcast. It's Gary here again, and I'd like to take this opportunity right off the bat to thank you very, very much for joining me for this episode. And I do hope that you're all doing fantastically well and investing in whatever work you've committed to getting you closer to the best version of you right now. And you know what? I'm really looking forward to sharing the content with you in this particular episode, as it's one that I think has struck a chord actually with those who have indulged in the blog. As you know, that I do the blog, and then after the blog I then record the podcast to give a bit of variety in terms of how people consume their media. And I've had some pretty poignant and significant feedback in terms of the topic of the blog, and I'm very happy to hear that. It's always good to have a bit of resonance with the work that you're doing. And that made me kind of think, just from an intro perspective for this particular blog. Recently, I was chatting with a friend who asked me, like, how do you come up with the topics for your blogs and your podcasts? And of course, the podcast typically follows the blog, so the blog would be the main inspiration for that. And I said at the time, I just make it up. And then we had a wee bit of a laugh, and I don't mean to sound flippant. Honestly, I don't in any way whatsoever. But what I meant, and I did explain it to him at the time as well, was that all of the topics involve some sort of experience that I've been involved in. Good experience, bad experience, something in between experience, and that I've been involved in that have made things different. And I kind of emphasise the word different there. And what do I mean by that? Well, the experience either helped or hindered the situation, or again, something maybe in between. And whether it was people essentially not living to their values or the values of the organisation that they were in at the time, communicating ineffectively, working aimlessly without intention, behaving inconsistently, or they were very poor or excellent at defining what they wanted. All of that has had an impact and an influence, certainly on me, on my working experience when these situations and circumstances arose. And then it got to a spot where I was thinking, what can I do about that? In the moment I would address it, deal with it, manage as best as we can with the tools and systems and people and personalities that we have at the time, and move on from that. But as I get to do what I do now, it gives me a really good pause for thought and an opportunity to kind of dig into my experience, dig into my learnings, my thoughts and my desires for a better existence, quite frankly, a better existence for everyone that I interact with and everyone who's listening to the pods or reading the blogs. And then the topics flow quite readily from that specific part. So if you were ever thinking about that and wondering where the topics came from, and if they were in some way random or in some way connected, then there's a little bit of intent there. There has been the odd time where I'm thinking, oh, that would have really been a good follow on from that, and I've just got the kind of sequence out there. But they're recorded pretty much real time from when they're published as well, so I don't have a backlog that I just get out there. I want to just make sure they're as topical and as current as I can make them at the time. And I'll come back to that a wee bit at the very end of the pod this episode as well, because it's kind of given me a wee bit of a food for thought of something that we could maybe do together. So I'll get to that. So what can you expect in this episode? Well, of course, we're going to work through the recent blog, and that particular blog centered on disappointments. And before we get to that, I will discuss my own personal journey and how that's shaping up, which, as I mentioned last time, is designed to both inform you, edutain you is my favourite word, and to hold myself to a level of account from a reflection point of view and perspective. And I did pose a couple of questions on the last pod asking if you're getting what you need from these pods and blogs and the other online content that I'm producing, because sometimes I struggle with the push communications, which is essentially what this is. I'm pushing this information out into your ears, and you're receiving it, you're consuming it, and then it's a little bit of a void. And I don't know if that's if it's really genuinely landing or not, because of the lack of immediate feedback that you can get in some other interactive communication exchanges as to whether it's landed, whether it's understood, whether people get it, whether there's a little bit more information they would like to get, or whether it's something that's just completely confusing. And so it's different to being in, for example, in a meeting, face to face, virtual or in person, in a classroom, in a public speaking engagement, or some other interaction where you're literally able to see and feel and absorb what is happening. And it can then make it a wee bit difficult to gauge the effectiveness of your communication efforts and whether the messages and information that you're sharing is actually resonating with you being, of course, the audience, the listener. And things I can do, I do somewhat track the metrics and such, but there's nothing like actual genuine real-time feedback to know if I'm actually creating compelling and relevant content for you. So something that I'm pondering again, and as I say, I'll come back to that a wee bit at the end, but there's nothing material for you to do on this one. It's just something that I guess that's really the way the world that we live in right now. That there's a few metrics out there, but you put it out there, you put yourself out there, and you hope that it lands, and you hope that it helps, and see where we go from there. So what have I been up to other than lamenting the fact of, is this working or is it not? And so, like before, continuing with my coaching, primarily one-on-one coaching, it's been of late, and I just love it. I learn. It's a journey. It's an absolute reciprocal journey for both myself and the clients that I'm working with, and I get just as much from each session as I hope they do. And as I say, it's the heartbeat of everything that I will do from this point going forward, regardless of any successes I enjoy in any other areas. The journaling is still going well, and it's daily, every morning, most evenings. And one thing it made me think of a wee bit though recently was I was coming up for a 90-day streak, and on day 88, I think it was day 88, I just forgot. I have no idea how I forgot. I had a busy day, but it was a busy day in a good context. Like I was enjoying my day. There was, one thing after the other, all good things that I was doing. And then it wasn't until the next morning when I got up and I'm kind of just getting ready to journal actually. And I thought, wait a minute, I don't actually have a recollection of journaling yesterday. And then I go in and I've broken my streak. And in the app that I record my journals in, it's you get a streak, you get badges and little tokens and such to just to give you a little bit of a boost and some motivation to continue. And it said, congratulations on your first journal on this cycle. So, and the interesting thing though, that I thought I would have been more disappointed than I was, and I think there's two reasons for that. The first one being, as I mentioned, I missed it because I was basically busy from the second my eyes opened to the second my eyes closed on good stuff with really good people and on doing things I enjoy and just generally getting caught up in the presence of life. And the second one is, that's okay if you miss it for one day. The key to not breaking a habit is not to miss it for a second day and a third day and a fourth day and then replace it with something else that's not going to serve you. So I was very, very easy on myself. I had a little bit of a laugh. I shrugged my shoulders. I journaled about the fact that I missed the journal and I started again. So yeah, it's a great thing. I think I'm learning a lot about myself and about how I operate through these things as well. So I've also been involved in a variety of trainings, mostly but not all, in the Growth Day community that I've mentioned before. Learned a little bit last month in April about holistic health, physical health, mental health, spiritual health, environmental health, things like that. The theme for this month is public speaking, and I've also been doing a little bit of delving into online course creation because I am getting closer to my first course being almost ready for consumption, and I know I've probably said that for the last couple of months because my intent was to actually have it finished probably about 6 weeks ago or so, but actually about 5 weeks ago. But I've just been busy on other things, and that's okay, but I'm getting closer, so I'm looking to try and figure out the best medium, best mode for the best student consumption to get the best out of what we're intending to do with this course, which is to help people remove blockers and live a more freeing and purposeful life. So speaking of that, I've been working on the curriculum, and I'm a fair percentage away, probably about 25-30% away from having it fully finished, going through, scrubbing, making sure it does what it says it's going to do, adding the additional materials, and then finding the best platform to work out on that. And just exactly on that topic, look out, if you in any way follow me on social media. The only place I'm really present on social media truly is LinkedIn, and that's the place I'm most consistently present in. I do dabble a little bit in Facebook because I have a presence there through the mastermind community that I'm part of, but I'm going to do most of it on LinkedIn, and I've got a bit of a social media campaign that's going to be coming up, a LinkedIn campaign I should say, that's going to be coming up here very shortly, actually maybe this week but probably next week, and then it'll just be basically saying this is coming soon. If you have an expression of interest, please do let me know right now. There will be specials for the early adopters and such. And speaking of social media, I don't know if I've mentioned this on previous pods, but I've been doing a series of Tuesday testimonials for the last, couple of months, and just basically taking the testimonials that are on garygillen.com, my website, and delving into those a little bit deeper and saying, this is what the client said, and it's all very nice and positive words, and this is actually what it means. We're looking deeper, we're going beyond the problem. Sometimes the problem isn't the problem, those sorts of things, and just giving a little bit more of a reflective finding on what that looks like, and I've really enjoyed that and got a fair decent amount of traction on those online. And I also do a Friday findings roughly every early Friday afternoon. That's the roughly part. It's definitely on a Friday, and it's a 3 to 4 minute video on LinkedIn on a Friday, basically explaining this is what I found this week, this is what I learned this week, this is something I'd like to challenge you to think about and move on with as you ease into your weekend and such. So if you don't follow me already on LinkedIn, please do look me up and give me a follow, connect. I'm more than happy to connect with anyone. Please don't try and sell me anything. That's quite prevalent, the more prevalent I get on social media, and it's a wee bit annoying, to be very honest. I say that after I'm saying I'm going to go on a social media campaign to sell my course, but I'm not going to direct message you if I've never met you and say buy this. I'm just going to put that out there, and hopefully people will read it and be somewhat interested. And the books that I have on the go right now, I do have the Coaching for Performance by Sir John Whitmore. I'm going to take that very seriously now, for real. I'm going to take it seriously and get through that. On the private side, I'm reading Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen, and it's a very different type of autobiography than I've read before. It's kind of like it's kind of almost like poetry. It's almost like a narrative, like a fantasy narrative almost. It's written in such a way, it's not kind of like super factual. This happened, she said that to him. I certainly haven't got to that part yet, and I've just started, so maybe it'll get a wee bit different. So it's a wee bit different to read. I'm having to kind of tune into a different frequency in terms of my readership on that. And I did mention before, I was reading a book called One Voice, and it was by the former Rangers. Glasgow Rangers is my team, as you will know if you've listened to me before. And it's the former chairman of Glasgow Rangers talking about how he was involved in the Rangers Revolution, as we call it, back in the mid 1980s as the chairman of the club. And the reason I mention that one more time, I have finished the book and I've got it in the archives now, but I have the honour and privilege of actually interviewing him and the author of the book. It was a fellow by the name of Stephen Halliday, and I'm going to be interviewing both of those in late May, and then I'll be publishing that out on the different platform that I do my podcasts on, which is on the North American Rangers supporters side, the NARSA side. So if you're interested in that, please get in touch, and I can certainly give you or point you in the right direction. It will certainly be on our podcast platform and probably on YouTube, not video on YouTube, just audio. I'm not delving quite into the video stuff just yet, apart from the Friday findings. But so I just thought I'd mention that I'm getting the opportunity to interview the great man himself, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. Okay, so on to a wee bit of a kind of supporting summary of the blog from blog number 17 it was, and it's on, the title is Disappointment, 5 Steps to Help Refocus. And originally this blog, just to give you a wee bit of an idea of the creative journey that I go on sometimes it was supposed to be along the lines of how do you react? What's the best way to react if your efforts don't land? If you put a lot of effort into something and it doesn't turn out the way that you were hoping it was going to turn out, but it ended up kind of naturally forming or morphing into a blog on essentially how to identify, acknowledge, validate and work through feelings of disappointment. So kind of somewhat connected, and it wasn't the original intent that I had. And ultimately, I experienced a disappointment recently where a joint communication effort I was involved in just missed some key components that would have changed it from being a good communication to an exceptionally good communication. So just one of these things that happens when you're working in a multifaceted environment and you have different key stakeholders and such, and no major harm done, but I felt disappointed. I'll be quite honest about that. So managed to work through that with the various parties and stakeholders involved through some very healthy and open dialogue. And I genuinely believe that we are all the better for it as we move forward together. But as I say, I still had to deal with the disappointment through the writing of this blog. Essentially, that helped me deal with that and figure out how I'm feeling, and figure out what my process looks like, and figure out how I'm going to get that refocus once I acknowledge and work through the feelings that I have. So it was kind of almost like I was journaling, like a journal on steroids kind of thing, the way that it all came about. But it was fun. I really enjoyed that. That's why I was so enthusiastic at the top of the show here, just to tell you about it. So firstly, consider a time when you were disappointed or when you experienced a disappointing situation. And it doesn't have to be a life changer. And that's essentially what I was mentioning on my other podcast that I do on the Rangers side. Sometimes it can be small. It could be a small thing, but it doesn't mean you're any less disappointed. And it's just a time where you had feelings of disappointment about something. So think about that right now, please. And then keep that in mind as I walk you through the remainder of the content that I'm going to walk you through right now. So something that you were disappointed about, doesn't have to be massive, and then just keep that in mind as we move forward. So despite our absolute best of everything that we could pour in to an endeavour, to an event or to something, sometimes things just don't go the way that we hoped, the way that we planned, the way that we expected, and sometimes we can be very pleasantly surprised and things can work out way better than we expected, and that would be incredible and fabulous, and of course we wouldn't feel experiences of or feelings of disappointment at that point if that happens. But on other occasions things are going to work out worse than we hoped and planned and worked for, and that's when most often than not that we're going to feel and have these experiences of disappointment. So I talk in the early stages in terms of disappointment of clearly setting and communicating expectations with others. And what I mean by that is not implying anything, and the implication part usually comes after the fact, where, and I've had this happen to me, where someone says, well, the expectations were implied. Oh, well, I'm very sorry, my clairvoyancy skills weren't as sharp as they should have been for that conversation. Or having something in your head that you didn't actually say to anyone. And I'm sure we've all experienced that at some time or another, where you would maybe react and think and say, well, you should have known. Or someone says that to you. Of course, well, you should have known. Well, it's obvious that that's what I wanted, or that's what I didn't want to happen, and such. And it's just one of these things that we have to deal with. And not only disappointment, of course, as I mentioned in the blog, you can also have other emotions going on, accompanying or compounding the disappointment, such as resentment, frustration, anger, anything on a negative connotation. So what is disappointment? Disappointment is natural, folks. It's, everyone will feel it at some point, and I don't think anyone is immune from it. it's temporary. Like this too shall pass. And if you can move as quickly as possible, as quickly as practical, actually, let me just use that word better than possible, as quickly as is practical, to remove the disappointment from being immediately present in your life, that it's something you're dealing with right now, today, and put it into the experience bucket. This is something that happened. This is something that I have learned from, I have had experience of, and it's something I'm going to use in the future for the betterment of me or whomever I am serving. And it's also an opportunity to reflect, to reevaluate your circumstances, and I would caution you here, like if you ignore or discount, which a lot of people do, your feelings, and not just disappointment I'm talking about here, I'm talking in general terms now, you're going to limit your opportunity to navigate through them appropriately and extract the good that you can extract from them. So, it's fine. Oh, don't worry about it. I'll get over it. It's just me being me. Don't do that. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging and validating how you feel in a given moment and then moving on. No one can take that away from you, nor should they even try. And give yourself that best opportunity to just go through it and extract the good. Because if you suppress it, you're not going to get any benefit from that, and who knows what that suppression is going to lead to at some point in the future. So what disappointment is not, it's certainly not failure. It's nothing of the sort. It's just a thing that happens, and it's not permanent, and that's the temporary part that I talked about earlier there. And your emotional response to the disappointment will evolve over time as well, so, and that's okay. So how you feel about the disappointment and the level and type and style of disappointment and the self-talk that comes from that will evolve over time. Typically, as you gain more experience, you get more information, and then you can start to look back with a different sort of lens. That's not to say that you discount anything that you felt in the moment. You felt the way that you felt, you feel the way that you feel, and then in the future you can make up your mind about whether that was appropriate, whether it wasn't, but that's all in receipt of different experiences and information. Not an excuse for you to go back and rubbish or bash your previous self. And it's most certainly not a barrier to success. It certainly doesn't have to be a barrier to success. And if it is a barrier to success, I think a lot of that can come from you and your own process that you do or don't follow, and some of the self-talk that maybe comes along with that. And my suggestion would be to embrace the disappointment, to use it, to take the good from it, as I've said a few times now, and be proud of how you used it. Analyse how you used it. Talk to people about how you used that feeling as a catalyst for a different type and style of action, a different type and style of reaction, and how you moved forward from there. Ultimately, as I mentioned, I think what we're talking about here is perspective. If you acknowledge and say to yourself, I'm disappointed today, I didn't want to be disappointed today, this thing happened, and I'm still trying to process exactly why it happened, but this is what I'm feeling for right now. And then that's the perspective that you have. And then once you get that out there, whether it's either just to yourself or to whomever you're interacting with, then you get an opportunity to move on. That's a stage of your ability to move through. And I think your perspective is a big part of that. So how to process disappointment? Using self-care, whatever it is you can do to help, whatever it is you do or can do to help with your physical, mental and spiritual well-being, do that, and do that consistently. Not just when you experience a disappointing situation, but when you're living like all the time, as much as you possibly can, as much as is practical for you to do. And part of that would be mindfulness to help you stay present and aware of your surroundings and aware of what's going on. Managing the self-talk, as I've mentioned here, basically shutting up the negative voices in your head. The negative voices in your head can say some very, very mean and nasty things to you. The key part, though, is their job is to protect you. Their job is to make sure that you don't put yourself in a difficult, compromising, embarrassing type situation. But they go about it a bit of a bloody funny way, don't they, by saying some of the bad things that they do to you. So our job is to silence them, not to completely get rid of them, because I don't think we can, but it's just to say, I hear you, I acknowledge what you're saying, now be quiet, I'm going to go do this other thing. Nothing Nothing good comes from negative self-talk, folks. Then journaling, I've talked about this a number of times now in my intros to the podcast. Just capturing in some way, electronically, in writing, physically on with a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper, just to try and get it out there. The more you get it out there, the more you're going to be able to acknowledge and feel, and then that's, as I say, that's one of the major steps towards moving forward. And then have an appropriate support network from wherever, from whomever that you need, that you get yourself the best opportunity to have that support network there to listen to you, to possibly guide you, to coach you, to support you, to just as I say, just listen, just be with you and give you that energy to be able to move forward. Then we're going to talk about resilience and perseverance. Resilience being our ability to adjust and recover from any setbacks that come our way, and perseverance being the ability to persist and basically throw determination in the face of any challenges, adversities or obstacles and setbacks that come our way. And the way that I explained this was basically to embrace the resilience. Like, you need to be resilient. So start from there and figure out where you excel in terms of your resilience and where you need a little bit more work to help you grow, and focus on those areas. Exacerbate the areas where you excel, and make sure you have a plan to counteract the areas that you need growth in. Cultivating perseverance is, I think here what we do is we basically tap into our memory bank and think about, when did you persevere the most, or when did you persevere the most successfully versus when you didn't, and use that information as a baseline to figure out the gap between when you were at your best and where you're at now, and figure out a plan or a path to get there. And celebrate any wins was the next area that I talked about, and like any wins whatsoever that you have going on is a very, very healthy practice, and it helps with so many different facets of life. The only caution I would have here is don't create false rationale for celebration. Don't make something up or force something into a situation that's not really appropriate, because people can see through the fake. If you understand what I mean by that. And then the last one is to commit to growth. I think this is essentially why you're listening to this podcast. I hope sincerely that that's why you're listening to the podcast. And everything that you experience, the good, the difficult, the hard, the horrible, the devastating, the disappointing, is an opportunity to grow. And if you make growth a state of being for you all day, every day, you're in such a fantastic position to be able to look at things differently, extract the learnings, use them for good, park the other things, and move on from a position of strength. So on to the actual 5 points of refocusing after a disappointment. The first one I have here is acknowledging your emotions, and it's definitely easier said than done. I don't make any qualms about that in the blog, and certainly I wouldn't do that here. But taking the time to recognize and process your feelings, taking the time to recognize and processing your feelings can help free you from those feelings as soon as is practical to do so. It's all about managing your time and investing the time in yourself. Then reassessing your goals. Every single day you have more information than you had the day before. You have, if you imagine an information bucket, and you're filling the information bucket every single day, and you can use the information you have to help to take stock and reassess how you're doing, to refocus your efforts in different areas, and move on from a position of knowledge, a position of clarity, and a position of strength. Identifying lessons learned every day, like as a growth day, as a learning day. Every single day is an opportunity to learn a lesson, is essentially what I'm saying there. And I cannot stress how important this is. Like, constantly asking yourself a version of, what's the lesson here? What am I supposed to learn from this? This should be in your vocabulary every single day, so that you can have that growth mindset, and really have that, as I said earlier, just to have it as your state of being. Then revising your action plan. Like, plans are not static. They're dynamic, and a plan is essentially our best effort at establishing your intention. To, and your intention can change over time, and when you know more, you can do more. When you know better, you can do better. But revising your action plan as regularly as is appropriate as new information becomes available, as you're progressing through, and seeing how quickly or slowly you're getting to it is going to be key for you, going forward. Absolutely it is. But if anybody thinks a plan is completely static and it should be absolutely rigid from beginning to end, they're probably not living in a huge state of reality, I would suggest. And then the last one is seeking support and accountability. You know that I talk about this a lot, and again, it's so important for your growth, for your learning, for your awareness, and essentially overall accountability to yourself. So again, just seek out whomever you think will help get you to where you want to go, and you can adjust and tweak and add and remove people from your support network as you move forward. So that's your 5 steps: acknowledge, reassess, identify, revise, and seek. And these words are not written in the blog by fluke. They are action-oriented type words, and I hope in some way that's going to help you. I finished off the blog with the Coach Gaz challenge, and basically asking how consistent you are in dealing with your disappointments. Does it differ in different parts of your life? For example, in work life or family life, or friend relationships, or your health, or whatever that looks like. Does your approach to and process of dealing with disappointments change if it's a different facet of your life? Either way, as I mentioned earlier, to pick an area of disappointment and then kind of align with that, with the information that I've just shared, I would challenge you with that disappointment that you had in your mind. Walk through the 5-step process that I just talked about there in terms of acknowledging, reassessing, identifying, revising, and seeking, and see how that makes a difference to your overall progress of navigating and moving forwards with the disappointment. And I would be absolutely delighted to hear if that changes your approach, if that changes your perspective, if that changes the outcomes, if that changes the speed to recovery for you. I would love to absolutely hear from you, from anyone who gives that part a go. Okay, so that was the blog, my friends, and no book report for this week, but I have been thinking about if I don't have a book report, because it's a wee bit unrealistic to be able to continue to read at a frantic pace. But I have been watching a lot of masterclasses. I'm subscribed to the Masterclass app, and of late I've finished masterclasses with Sarah Blakely talking about entrepreneurship, Chris Voss talking about negotiation, and Gino Orema, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his last name. I probably just butchered it there, but on leading winning teams, and he's a college basketball coach, and I've been dabbling in TED Talks this last wee while. So what I think I might do is, once I finish a masterclass, I take copious notes when I'm going through the masterclass. I might just provide a wee bit of a brief summary. I'm not going to do it this time because I'm not prepared to, but for next time I have a bank of those, and that's just the ones I finished recently. I've got another bunch from when I was first really into it, a year or two ago. So I'll maybe do that for next time as well. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Best You, a coaching podcast, and I hope it was a valuable use of your time, and that you're absolutely going to join me for more as we move forward together. And if you did find it valuable, here's the wee bit of the plug that I say every time. Please do share it with at least one more person, as we kind of try and build this community of like-minded folks from around the world to continue to help and support each other and to be the absolute best that we can be. And this is the moment where I say, have you actually shared it with one other person? And if not, why not? And I'm tugging on your heartstrings a wee bit, not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm just trying to say, I'm putting myself out there. I would appreciate if you would do the same. And one wee thing, just from a logistics perspective, in the podcast system that I use now, they've launched a new thing called fan mail. Their words, by the way, not mine. Fan mail. and it's in the app. I think it's only in the Apple Podcasts app for now, but there's an ability to be able to go in and comment right on the podcast in and of itself. I believe that they'll be rolling that out on other platforms. And by the way, I might be wrong. I've just got it in my head that it's for Apple only. It might be for all the major platforms, but you have an opportunity, and I'll get notified if you say, if you don't want to send an email, or you don't want to text me or LinkedIn chat me or anything like that, LinkedIn direct message or whatever it's called, you can then, as you're listening in the app, if you're listening to it on an app, then you would be able just to type something there just saying, hey, really enjoyed that, hey, I think you missed the mark with this, you could have went a bit deeper on that, or something like that. Any feedback is most welcome, as long as it's nice. But no, I mean, seriously, if there's anything that you would like to see, then I would be more than happy to hear from you. I'm going to give it a go. This is the first episode that's actually been applied on, so I'll be interested to see if anybody actually does it or not. I'll give you a bit of a running commentary of that as we move forward. Now, here's the thing I was alluding to at the beginning of the show. Are there any topics that I haven't covered that you would like me to cover? I have a list that's going to take me up to, it's probably about 18 months worth of topics that I plan to cover, and it's just a title for now, and then I just get into doing my research, going into my memory banks and writing what comes from the heart. But is there anything specific that you have a burning desire to hear about, to read about, to listen to as we move forward? If so, please do get in touch with me. You can contact me through hello@garygillen.com, quite easy to remember, or you can DM me on LinkedIn or however else you want to get in touch with me, and let me know. And you don't even have to explain why. It would be nice if you could, but you really don't have to explain why. If you just give me a title and a little bit of a semblance of understanding of really what it is you're trying to get from it, I would be more than happy to deviate from my existing list and do it as a listener request, or a community request. So, and I'm going to say that every time. So please, if you don't do it right now and you're kind of thinking about it, I won't name and shame anyone if that would be your preference, or if you would prefer to get a little bit of publicity through this, more than happy to do that as well. But I want to provide content that's meaningful and appropriate for you. So if there's something that's on your mind where you're thinking, oh man, I wish he would do something about this, I'm more than happy to consider it and do my very best for everyone in the community. Don't forget to take a peek at the website for back episodes of the podcast, back episodes, or back. I don't call it an episode of a blog, do you? Back catalogues of the blogs. That's probably the best way to say it. And some other stuff that's going to come there when I get my course ready and such. There'll be a landing page to be able to book it and the like there. So until next time, my friends, please do take care of yourself, and all the very best to you in your ongoing journey, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Cheerio for now.